Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rational Female Podcast. And today we've got a very interesting guest. Her name is Guadalupe, and she is a feminist. So, this is the first time I've ever actually had a live interaction with a feminist on this channel podcast. So, I hope that you will enjoy this discussion. It's going to be as civil as possible. This lady is very interesting, very intelligent. She's got a very academic background. So, starters, why don't you first off introduce yourself and tell the audience a bit about why you are a feminist?
Perfect. Hello everybody. Hello, Sarina. Thank you very much for inviting me. I think this is going to be very interesting since we are a feminist and someone who is not very keen on feminism. And we are going to have a lot of fun, I am sure. Well, my name is Guadalupe, and I come from Spain, in case anybody wonders about this name, Guadalupe Rodriguez. And yes, I am a feminist. I define myself as a radical feminist. And why I became a feminist is it's been gradually, but I always had that feeling that the world I live, the life I live, was very different to what I was told. In history, literature, films, they didn't speak to me. They didn't include me. So there was always that feeling there, which I don't know if many women, I can see that many women fit very well into the system, but I didn't. So I became a feminist, and I can assure you, feminists do not.
Sorry, how old were you when you became a feminist?
Okay, so I was very much already becoming really a feminist was in my 30s when I did some studies. I did a master's in translation and literary translation, and I chose to do my dissertation in Germaine Greer, because she was the one, it was the book that I read initially, her book, and that's
Which one was it?
Which one was it? The female eunuch.
Okay, cool.
Yes. And to be honest, at the beginning, I didn't understand every single thing, but I knew this is talking to me. This is the life I lived and my experience in life. And then I chose her for my dissertation, and then I started to read every single book in the gender studies department of the Middlesex University. And then I did the same thing in Goldsmith College, where I used to work. It was like finding fresh water when you are really, really thirsty. For me, it was my world. It was speaking to me. So that's how I became a feminist, really.
Okay. So why do you think feminism is important? And okay, actually, that's what does feminism mean to you? Because there's a lot of different definitions of feminism. What would you say the definition of feminism is?
Well, feminism, there are a few definitions. It's like saying what is socialism, what is fascism. Okay, feminism is a political and critical theory. Yes, it's an analysis of reality. For example, you watch a film. I know it's not reality film, but you watch a film and you analyze it. You read the news and you are analyzing the news. It's like the reality given to you everywhere. It's like you have a different conscience. You can see that you are not included in most of the things that are happening in the news. You are not included in it. I mean, you buy a book of history, read a book of history. There is no women anywhere.
That's not actually true, but so what do you think? Why do you think that feminism presents reality? Because you said that the world you grew up in is different from what you were taught. So where was the difference? What's the difference between the world Like, what was the world you grew up in telling you, and what's the world that you came to discover, which is the reality of feminism?
Okay, the reality of women, the women I grew up with, and then my reality as a young girl that I wanted to talk about it as well, to see the path. For example, women struggle, the women around me, in my childhood, for example, women struggle, women worked, women were bringing up their children. The violence around them was incredible. Yes. They didn't have any power. They didn't have any rights. They were mistreated. Um, that has been, I've been watching that all of my life, everywhere. One way or the other, women are not appreciated. Women are not treated well. Women are not believed. I mean, we women are enemies of women as well, because we are encouraged not to, we are encouraged to be enemies and not to believe each other, you know. So it was it was a tough reality. I mean, I wanted to say, for example, and this is all in relation as life as a woman. Okay, maybe now, I don't think now it's different. I don't think now it's different because I have children myself, so I know that women go. I'm talking about women. I know that men have different issues, but we are talking about women. For example, as a young girl, I was assaulted by a gang of young boys. Yes.
Okay.
I thought it was my fault because I was wearing a certain type of blouse.
Did
Until,
people tell you that? Did people say that to you?
well, the thing is that people didn't say anything.
Okay.
You were assaulted. It was stopped because I was with another girl and she went to get help, but I was seriously assaulted.
Yeah.
Then I remember, you know, at the age of 17, I trained as a nurse. It was the first thing I did, educational wise. And I remember I was 17, yes, because at that time you could go at 17 years of age, you could go into nursing. And I remember that I was so happy. And a 47-year-old doctor, a father of two, married man, made my life impossible with the harassment that he really he was harassing me continuously when nobody was there. So there was no witness. For example, I mean, I don't know about young women nowadays, but I can make a map of my life, all harassment, until you get to a certain age, and thank God, that's finished. Thank God. Yes. Then I remember coming to England and working as a nanny or au pair. And I remember how my presence in the house, due to the attention that the husbands were given to me, you know, the relationship between me and the women in the house was strained because the women, they see you as, you know, a threat. But it's all because the presence of the man enjoys that.
So you think that the reason why the women treated you differently was because of the husbands, not because of the women themselves?
Yes, because the women are
Okay.
threatened. Yes, because
So
the
why
women
do
are
you
threatened.
think that the women were threatened? So just to challenge that a bit, because there's a theory of female intersexual competition and evolutionary theory, which talks about how women are often threatened by other women as a threat to the marriage. And there's a lot of cases, for example, the reason why a lot of married women look down upon other women coming into the household was because of the threat that the other woman would have an affair with the husband. So how do you account for women's suspicion towards other
Well,
women?
because that's real. The men pay a lot of attention to you in front of the wives because they feel that they can do it.
Okay, but what
It's a
about
power. And the women, well, the women, you are threatened. If you are married to a man and your man is not respecting you and he is paying attention to a young woman who is very young, doesn't have the children, you may have 3 children, 4 children. Yes. So you are there depending as well on the partnership with that man behaving very well with you. You are having a person to help both of you, and he is showing off, um, showing his male power over, maybe that one is better than you. But that's, if we go into now, when we go into the oppression, we can see that that's been since the beginning of time. Men have lots of options.
But don't you think that the women who have affairs with married men should face some blame as well? Because I agree that it's obviously wrong for men to have affairs, but shouldn't we also place some blame on the woman who is having an affair with the married man?
But definitely, but you see, women are, I would say, in my case, I never did it because, to be honest, I never ever, for me, it was harassment. It was stopping me from being a happy, free person in all the stages of my life. It has never, the attention that you get from men as a young woman. I don't know how beautiful women, really beautiful women, deal with this, because some women may see it as, oh, they are the chosen one. I never
Well,
saw
yeah,
it like
some
that.
women enjoy that kind of attention and they do it on
Yes.
purpose. They actually go out and seek out men who are married. Like, I don't know about real life, but I know, for example, films. There are films like Fatal Attraction or The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, or even a recent film I watched called The Housemaid. You have these young women and how they actually are very interested in getting attention from older married men. And actually, when I was growing up, a lot of the girls around me wanted attention from older men, and they would dress and behave in ways they deliberately sought out attention from older men.
Well, but why is that, Sarina? You know why?
Well, that's a good question.
Because, yes, because we are told, yes, most of us, some women, okay, some women are more obedient. They react to that more than others. You can see it. You can see it everywhere. You can see that women dressed up to get validation. We are validated by the attention a male gives us. In
So don't you
fact,
think that's the woman who's choosing to do that? Don't you think that should be on her rather than blaming the man?
listen, you will never get me to blame women because I don't blame women. I analyze, as a feminist, feminism analyzes why women act in that way. I'm not going to, women are no angels, but women are told to be women, the value of women, especially many young women, especially when you are young. Yeah, you are young yourself. But we all, when we are young, our validation is whether you have a boyfriend, someone wants you. You have a husband, someone married you. You are a married lady. You are of value. Yeah. Because in general, nowadays, not so much, obviously, but a single woman or a divorced woman doesn't have that value to be just there, single with a cat. Oh my God, poor. It's better to be with a husband. So, that validation to be the chosen one, to be attention from men, is a value. I mean, it's giving you value as a female. So women go for that. But that's the society is telling you that. It's telling you that.
Would you say that men also gain validation from women? Because, for example, a lot of young men now, they're known as incels. If they're unable to get attention from women, they're really looked down upon and laughed at and even mocked by other men or by women. So would you say that don't men also gain validation from women?
Well, yes, because the masculinity is about getting as many women as possible. It's not about having a relationship with a woman only. It's that plus being able to have a lot of affairs, being able to cheat, being able to have a double life sometimes. That's what masculinity is telling them. So when you have these boys, I call them boys, I don't know, they may be older, the incels. I mean, who is an incel? Is a man that doesn't have to have the social skills to treat women well and to be able to have a relationship with a woman. Yes. And also because we are brought up, women, we are brought up in that same society, we are getting the messages that the man that comes to you and is a little bit of a show off, that's the one that we have to listen to. And instead of going perhaps and trying to build a relationship with a man that is much better quality, that is probably a little bit more shy, yes, and this probably would be a much better boyfriend, a much better husband. But we are getting the same messages that the alpha male, as they call it, who is really a ridiculous personality because it's all hot air, nothing under, yeah, is the one that you should go for, the alpha male, whatever it is, because I have never exactly know what is an alpha male, but you can hear, you can see, oh, it's an alpha male. It's an alpha male. What is it that he does?
So it's very interesting you say that, because women are often attracted to men who display Machiavellian or bad male qualities. And you said it, you just said it yourself. Women tend to reject genuinely good men because they want bad men who may treat them badly. So do you not see how it's not necessarily all the fault of men? There's no accounting for women's potential poor choices. Like, you're familiar, I suppose, with the book 50 Shades of Grey.
Which one, sorry?
50 Shades of Grey, the famous book. 50 Shades of Grey.
Yes, I know what it is about.
It's very popular. I don't like it. It's very popular with women. It was written by a woman, and it's basically about a man who abuses a woman. It's basically about abuse, and a lot of women love that book and say it's like a fantasy.
Well, you can see that women are also, because in this talking about oppression, you can see how women are also complying with the oppression. But it's because you have to fit into the system. You understand? Many women do. In fact, if you are all these women, I mean, women that say that prostitution is fantastic, women that say that OnlyFans is a way of earning a living, women that say it's your oppression. You go into your own oppression and you make you sexualize and you make it erotic. Yes. And then 50 Shades of Grey, well, it's about this. Look, you have the very rich man, as far as I know, is a very rich man who is quite young, attractive, knowledgeable, has access to everything, and he goes for a girl that is a nothing girl in terms of she doesn't have a career, she still cannot even pay for a computer, she has nothing. But he goes for her. He can go for an equal woman. No, he doesn't. Why? It's power. Isn't it? He goes for a woman that he knows that he has some type of influence and power over her. It's a girl that is supposed to know nothing. And he uses her in a way that she will end up getting everything that he has through her submission and humiliation. Yes, isn't it that?
Well, are you not familiar with the fantasy a lot of women have of being sexually submissive to men? A lot of women actually fantasize about that. Most women don't fantasize about men who are, nice and mild-mannered. Women tend to fantasize about men like that in terms of what women tend to seek out. That's why that book is so popular with women.
I think women really, if you are not aware, because violence against women, because that's violence against women. Violence against women is it's everywhere. I mean, 2 women a week in this country are killed by their partners, but by men that are that kind of men who control them. They go into the relationship thinking that this is a wonderful man, or he's like this, he's like that, she feels fantastic. And then slowly, she disappears. She doesn't know who she is. She cannot leave the house. He starts to beat her and he kills her. Well, at least two women a week are killed by their partner. Yes.
So I understand that. And you did mention earlier that you grew up seeing a lot of women being violent. A lot of women being victims of violence, which is obviously very bad. And I absolutely understand that. I also have been assaulted myself by a man. I've been in dangerous situations too. I will say, however, though, that if you look at statistics, lesbians report the highest rates of domestic violence. So a study found that 43% of lesbian women have experienced domestic violence, and 61% of bisexual women. And it's actually lower for gay men. For gay men, it's 26%, and bisexual men is 37%. We also see, so there are men who have been abused. I had a look online about well-known men who have been abused. So I found an example of Tyler Perry. He was abused by females in his life. The actor from Dirty Dancing, Chevy Chase. These are just obviously a couple examples. But there are also stories, like, for example, the famous story, I don't know if you know the story Carrie by Stephen King, and it depicts the story of an abusive mother. I actually read, okay, I may have forgotten to write this down actually, but basically it was found by it was found that women actually reported higher levels of abusing their children. It was found this by like the national, you know what, let me, whatever, don't distract you, but yeah, so I found something saying that, I think it was by some in America, that mothers actually have higher rates of abusing their children than fathers. So how do you account for women who abuse men or women who abuse other women? And are you aware that women can also be abusive and that men can be abused too?
Well, I am very aware that women have the potential to abuse others. Yes. However, when you talk about the lesbians being the women that abuse their partner, another lesbian woman, I don't share that. I know it's not true. But if you have found, I am not saying that is wrong. I know it's not true. It's not true. In any case, if you have two people of the same, let's say that there is a couple that two females, yes, in a relationship arguing, you have, let's say, a more equal fight. It's like when men are fighting with each other. Men are fighting with each other. Men are killing each other for whatever reasons. But it's not someone you are sharing your home with, your feelings with, your financial situation with, your mortgage with, or your life with, and your children. It's a different situation. Men fight, women fight as well, but it's different. As I say, I don't believe that lesbians are. There is no such a thing, and I am very much into domestic violence at the
It is a
moment.
thing, but never mind.
Yes,
So,
but
so why? What do you think? Let's move on slightly. So, patriarchy is an integral part of feminist theory. So, what do you think patriarchy is, and why? How do you think patriarchy was created, in to create this what feminists call the oppression of women?
okay. So I've been thinking, how can I describe it? I have found something that I heard from somebody, and it's a little bit silly, but bear with me. There were two fish happily going around in the sea, doing whatever they do, whatever the fish do. They were happy and content, the two of them, yes? And on the opposite direction, there was against the current, there was another fish passing by. And he said, hello, the water is very cold today. And the two fish, the other two fish that were going together, was saying, they look at each other and they say, water? What water? That water is patriarchy. It's what we don't see. It's very difficult to detect because we are brought up in it. Our life and our social life, our rules, our values, our morals, our history, everything is the patriarchy. So it's very hard to see. So the water, as I said, is what I would call the patriarchy. There are two types of patriarchy, according to the feminist analysis. There is the hard one, which is the system that we have in many countries in the world, in most countries in the world, especially in the Islamic world. It's very obvious, it's very clear, it's inside the home and outside the home. Everything is ruled by that type, by patriarchy. And then we have the light patriarchal system, which is the one that we have in the Western world. And I will tell you what it is. I mean, we have equality at the level of a state. In law, in most cases, the law is supposed to be equal at work.
So
We
you
have
would say
laws.
that we have legal equality in the West.
Well, legal equality in many areas. Still,
Okay.
if you have issues, for example, in a divorce, or if you have issues with child custody or sexual violence, there is where you are going to see that you won't be believed. That is quite hard. So, I mean, someone steals your handbag, and it's so very obvious someone stole your handbag. But if you are sexually assaulted, they are going to ask you, was it with consent that you gave your, it doesn't.
Well, they have to ask that for legal purposes. The
Well, yes,
problem with assault
yes.
is it's a very hard crime to prove. That's why most cases go unreported. I'm not
So,
saying I
yes,
agree with that at all. I'm just saying that's the reason why
yes.
it's obviously
Okay.
very
So in
bad.
that area, the law is still very patriarchal. They are
But
trying
why
to
is that I'm not sure what that has to do with patriarchy. That just sounds more like
Yes, well,
I don't know
because
whatever. But it's difficult.
patriarchal is made up of laws, morals, religions, values. Everything is what is the patriarchal system. Let me finish for a second. Okay, so in this system that we live in the West, we are all supposed to be. What happens now, what you can see, is we are told that, especially young women, we are told that all we do is our choice. It's your choice. You consented to it. Yes? So it's no force like in the hard patriarchal systems. Here is your choice. You choose to do this. So it's like it's an individual choice. Yes? You choose to have children. You have to bring them up. You choose to work because, well, basically you have to feed them. But no, you could have chosen to stay home, yes, but you cannot feed them. You are supposed, I'm talking about a female, you're supposed to be the emotional, the one that provides the emotional stability for everybody. You have to work because you have to bring money, you have to take care of those children, you have to bring them up. So basically all that is still, bringing up the children and running your home is still the female's job. Hasn't changed in general. But at the same time, you have study and go to university, let's say, or you had a job and you have to carry on working. So now you are working and you are out there, but you still have carrying in your shoulders everything that women have been doing in the past. Yes, in many cases, especially like middle class, where women didn't have to work outside the home, but now you work outside the home, and they say it's your choice. It's your
Okay,
choice.
so if I may, a lot of people who criticize feminism say the exact same thing, that in the past, women, especially as you said, middle class women, didn't actually have to work because their husband could provide for them financially. So women did have a job, an important job of being in the home. But now women have to have two jobs because feminism has pushed more women into the workforce. And I want to ask something very interesting. So feminists, I imagine the feminist position is that women were oppressed because you couldn't work. Is that true?
Not necessarily.
But that's an argument that women couldn't work and couldn't have their own financial independence.
That's part of it because they depended on men. Once you depend on another person, because if you are at home and if you have children, if you don't work, you are the furthest away possible from the source of the money and the source of everything that is going to keep you alive. You depend on the intermediate, which is your husband, your partner, whoever. Someone is bringing you the food to survive for you and your children if you don't work. That makes you very dependent. If that very person dies, let's say, so we don't criticize them, if that person dies, my dear, what do? if
Well,
that
that's where
person
things like
decides,
alimony look research,
uh,
and
sorry, if that
influence.
person, yes, that's patriarchy, depending on somebody else, because that person, the one earning the living, earning the money, yes, has the power of decision for everything, where the money usually, yes, they decide. That's how it always ends. They decide where the money goes, how much is there to spend. They are in charge, they are in control. You are a dependent, you are like a child, have independence who are your children. You understand? So that puts you in a very vulnerable position. And that's what happens with women. And you do not have, you don't have a pension. Depends, you are going to supposed to share the pension with that man. Imagine if he leaves you, which happens very often, of you get divorced, you are starting from zero, you don't have a pension, yes? You don't have anything. You are just someone there. In fact, poverty, the poorest people in the world are women. It's as simple as that. The money is
Okay,
all in the hands of men.
so
So that's
you
the
said
difference.
that women didn't have financial independence, but then you said earlier that women are having to work in the home and out of the home. So I'm slightly confused. What should women be doing? Should women be at home with their children, or should they be working, or should they be single, or should they not be married? I mean, do you think as well, like, would you say, do you think, are you against marriage in general? Do you think marriage is a patriarchal construct?
No, well, it is, but no, no, no. I think love and being with a partner and having the same project in life is wonderful. It's the best. Yes. It's not necessarily for everybody, but having children, I think that the best way is to be married. So if you divorce, you divide things properly, and then the children can have the proper maintenance from the father as well. I think it's better to be married than to be just together for legal reasons. Legal
So you
reasons.
know the second wave feminists were actually lobbying against marriage, and actually historically divorce was illegal to protect women because, as you said, the man could just leave. That's why divorce was not a thing for like a lot of human society. It was actually to protect women. And where if a man died, there was alimony. I'm not sure entirely when this was introduced, but there were laws created by men to actually protect wives and widows so they wouldn't be completely alone. And actually, there's something called known as the Indian sati ritual. So women would throw themselves onto the fire. And the reason actually for that is because if they didn't do that, they wouldn't be what's I'm looking for? Like they wouldn't actually that's not a very good example. I want to focus on the West because I actually forgot that. But anyway, I haven't written that down. Anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is that divorce was illegal to protect women. And as you said, marriage was about division of labor. So, what you call patriarchy, men and women built societies together for the purposes of survival and raising children. And there have been four human eras. So, there was the hunter gatherer era, the agricultural era, the industrial era, and the digital era. And men held external responsibilities, so work and politics, whereas women held internal authority, such as being at home and being with their children. So men worked outside the home while women worked in the home. So would you say that this was complementary gender roles, or would you say that this was about men oppressing women?
Okay. I also, we didn't, I just was thinking that, the previous question about what women are supposed to do. Yes.
Well, yeah, because if women, a
Just a
women's
minute.
supposed.
Let me just say what women are supposed to do. Yes, just because I wanted, this is a very important point because I heard it many times. You were saying, okay, look, women are human beings that are entitled to everything, just like men do. I always repeat it, and this is always my opinion, obviously, but I see it around. Women are not supposed, women are intelligent human beings, and they want to have children, they want to bring them up, they want to be there working in good conditions, they want to share a project with the father of their children if possible, if not maybe with a new partner. But so they have done all this. Women from 300, 250 years ago, when feminism started, to now, women have reached the point now where they have access to education and jobs. But the problem arises when the woman has a child. Okay, they have children. This couple has children. And the woman who was working as a lawyer, who was working in a shop that was independent and free, she gets together with this man, they have children, and then nothing changes. He carries on with his career. The employers know that he's not going to be home taking care of the children. So he's going to have offers, more money, he's going to progress non-stop because they know, society knows, all the employers know that is going to be, they don't even ask him, do you have children? They know that that man is going to have a partner. If he has a partner, she's going to be the one shouldering the running of the home, the running of those children's lives. Yes, they are ill, they have problems at school. She's going to be the one. Most men don't know who is the name. What is the name of the teacher of children? They don't know what. So what is the solution? What is the problem? Because that is the key of the question. So women have changed. They are out there. They can be doctors, lawyers, and all the professions. Because in the lower classes, women always worked. That was not the issue.
Absolutely.
Okay, so women can be now professionals, being politicians and everything. But since the men are not prepared to change, to share what women have been given to them by them, you stay home, you are there, you would be my wife, you would be providing me with sex, children, care, like basically a servant, but with a lot of love. Okay, let's put the love, which wasn't ever like that, because marriage, the modern marriage, the romantic marriage is only recent. In the past, no, in the past it didn't exist. It was just
romanticism came about in the 1700s.
So what needs to change? What needs to change is that men are refusing to share equally as equal partners. That's why there is all this crisis that men don't want these women, they don't want career women, they don't want this, they are incels, nobody likes them, the manosphere. We have all this Andrew Tate that wants women like this. I mean, they listen to Andrew Tate, who is basically, can I say the word P-I-M-P, pimp?
No, he's just, I don't want to talk about him. He's a horrible man. Yeah.
He's a horrible man, but they are all following him. All these man.
Most people don't like Andrew Tate. Most people think he's an awful person. So can I ask, so you said earlier that the man is going out to work, right? So he's, why is the man spending all this time going out to work if he has a wife and children?
Well, he's supposed to be the provider, but he will be going out anywhere because everybody works. Men and don't stay home. Men have, because life is not to stay in a home. Life is to go. We are all wanted to be out there and to explore the world. But if you can go. Men have been able to travel, to explore the world, to be everywhere, to be in wars. I mean, they didn't need women.
They get to go out and die in wars. Okay. Yeah,
yes. Well, dying in the wars, because dying in the wars in the past was an honor. That's why we have, look, you go anywhere in London and you can see statues of men that have died in war. How many women
are they privileged?
Huh?
Is that patriarchy, men dying in wars?
In many cases, nobody forced them. There's the privilege.
Actually, conscription was legal. A lot of men were conscripted for war. Boys as young as like 14 in some cases were conscripted to go out and die in wars. And actually, in the early 1900s, yes, it's true that a lot of women couldn't vote, but they also didn't have to be conscripted for war, and men could only vote if they were conscripted, I believe, in the US.
Okay, there are many things there in that one. Okay, forced to go to war, yes, because that's why, the working classes, the big lords wanted the working classes to have 100 children. I mean, women will have up to 16 children, and then they will die themselves. Because women died of childbirth. Women were babies producers, yes, machines. A husband will keep having this woman, and he wouldn't care. She will be bringing up children every 9 months.
Sorry, Guadalupe. May I ask, why is it that you keep saying that men just saw women as servants, and there was no love, no care, no compassion?
No,
there's no view of Okay, but there's no view of like men's love. Okay, so are you familiar, for example, with the concept of chivalry? So men being expected to behave gentlemanly towards women. That was very common in the medieval ages. Or the stories of men professing love for women, like the Odyssey, men doing things to
The
love and
Odyssey.
care for women.
Okay, the Odyssey. What is the Odyssey about? You mean the one with Ulysses? You
Well,
mean
yeah.
you mean
I mean,
the
isn't that
mythical? Okay, what is that about?
okay? So isn't the Odyssey basically a story of a man spending all this time because he wants to get back to his wife and family?
Okay, let's watch it. So this man who is a warrior, Ulysses or Odysseus, I don't know how because it's the two
Odysseus.
names. Okay. Did you say Ulysses or Odysseus in
No,
English?
Odysseus. Yeah.
Odysseus, Odysseus.
No,
Okay.
Odysseus. I'm not that familiar
Odysseus,
with the story. I
Odysseus,
just know a
Odysseus,
lot of
Odysseus,
background.
Odysseus. Okay, this man, okay, who is supposed the prototype of man and manhood and what it is to be a hero. Okay, so he wins the war with Sparta against Sparta, and then he's coming back home, which is Ithaca. I think it's Ithaca or Ithaca. I don't know.
I really don't know the story. I
Okay,
know
anyway,
very
but
little of it.
we don't go too much, but because you mention it, you just have to see what it is that they are telling us, because it's all these are the foundation of our culture in the West.
Yeah.
So this is the idea. Basically, they are telling us what Homer is telling us is the story of what a life is.
It's the hero's
Okay.
journey.
Yes. Okay. So we have this man who is this hero, and he's supposed to be back home. At home, he has his wife Penelope, who is supposed she's the queen, and he was the king of this small kingdom somewhere in Greece, in one of the islands. And he's been fighting, and he wants to come back to her. They have a child. Yes. Now, so he does this trip that is called life. It's symbolically the trip of life. Life as a long trip, as a journey. So he travels in there because he goes from one island to the other, going back home. And in his path, he's finding adventure. He learns how to share all the things with his, just a minute, I will tell you, with his soldiers. He finds friendship with his soldiers, because this is about men being together, because what matters is men being friends and being saving each other. And then he meets two goddesses. Yes, he meets and he spends 10 years with one and 10 years with the other. Yes. So in total, this trip going back home lasts 20 years. So he's experiencing life. He's
He could
enjoying
have
life.
died. It's not
No,
like
no,
it
no,
was all an
no,
adventure.
no, he doesn't die.
No, but he
goes,
could have. It's quite a dangerous journey. It's not like, oh,
yes,
I'm just walking through the
yes, but
woods.
he's
Like these
learning.
stories
Yes,
are
but
about perils, tribulations.
yes, but he's having this amazing adventure where he's enjoying life. He's alive. It's to be alive. He's going through life and to be challenged and to be, having all these experiences. He go back home, and his wife Penelope is waiting for him. 20 years. She's supposed to be faithful to him, because if he finds out that she's been with a man, and she had many men waiting for that wanted to marry her because she was a queen, yes, and she's been there faithful to this man, waiting for him for 20 years, she wouldn't even recognize him when he appeared, and he expected her to be faithful, because that's symbolically what a woman is, a good woman, and what a man is. And
It
she's been
says
taken
that he was held captive by a nymph for 7 years.
Yeah, no,
before
by
being
10 years. By 10 years, each two nymphs captured. Apparently, we cannot go into that, but as described in the book, he was having the most amazing sexual life. He was a goddess, a nymph. Okay, let me finish just to see the wife waiting at home, which is symbolic, because that's what the role they gave us to us. Yes, the wife holding the flame of the home alive. She kept the home, the kingdom. She couldn't come outside because women in the Greece in those times wouldn't even go outside. They wouldn't talk to anybody. They would have to be
That's not
covered.
true. You're
Well,
talking
yes,
about women
well,
in Islamic countries.
in this case, true. And then she couldn't have any relationship. And he arrived, and you know what he did? He killed all the slaves because they used to have slaves. He killed all the female and male slaves.
So we
Okay?
killed the females and the males.
Yes,
Yeah.
and the slaves that had been there taking care of his home, he killed them. That's our hero.
Right.
That's our hero. And she was there doing zero, nothing with her life. You understand? This is symbolically, yes, these are the symbols of the Western civilization that we bring them from the Greek mythology. What is to be a man and what is to be a woman? And then that expands into many different areas. Symbolically, to be a woman is to be that faithful to one man, waiting, taking care of him, and he's out there in the world, running adventures, having affairs, having a
That's the
life.
question from the chat. Wouldn't women want their man to be faithful to her if they were lost for 20 years? Wouldn't it be the same thing? Wouldn't a woman want her man to be faithful to her if he was lost for 20 years?
I don't know, would you? If he was lost for 20 years, I would want him to have a life, but I would like to have a life as well. But I wouldn't. I couldn't have it.
Sure.
So
Okay. So
yeah.
yeah, the thing is, the problem, I was giving that an example of one of these great, stories about the hero's journey. That was a point I was making. I'm actually not familiar with the story of the Odyssey. I'm not going to pretend to know something that I don't. I will say though, a lot of these stories, right? They show tales of struggle. Okay. So right, how do I move on from this? A lot of feminists say that they want equality to men. Is that what feminists want? Do you want men and women to be equal?
Equal as human beings, the same rights. That's what we want. Equal as human beings. Men are men. They might be. Our bodies are different, obviously. All that about men being strong is a stupid argument,
Right. Okay.
because
So
men are not lifting trees and houses with their fingers anymore. They don't need it. And we want the same opportunities. We want to be equal, sharing all the the projects. If especially in intimate relationships in the home, you don't want to be the one that's is helping all the members of the family to have a life, while you have none.
okay, I'm not sure where you keep getting this idea that women didn't have a life and couldn't do anything, because, for example, in the medieval era, a lot of women, they would work in the fields. There were women who worked in textiles, women who spun wool. There were women who worked as governesses later on, women who worked in education. Women have always been able to work, but also, where's this view coming from that a woman being a wife, a woman being a mother, a woman being at home meant that she was being oppressed? Couldn't you argue actually that women in a way had it easier, because the woman just had to be home with the children. The man had to go out and, work sometimes 10, 12 hours laboring. The man had to go out and fight and often die. The idea of masculine honor was tied to death. It was tied to sacrifice. So couldn't you actually argue that in many ways, I'm not saying I have this view necessarily, couldn't you argue that life was actually easier for women compared to men?
No.
But why not?
Okay, let us look at work, because you bring it up all the time. It's true that very young men, first of all, men at the top have oppressed other men. They still do. Yes? They still do. But that's the only type of oppression that men have. Women have the same type of oppression. They get the oppression at work, the oppression from the ones at the top, plus the fact that they are the ones bringing up the children. That puts them in another oppression, level of oppression. Yes? Now, war. The men go to war. Okay, until very recently, men were forced to go to war by other men, usually old men, yes, because of their own ambitions and their own greed and power, yes, looking for power, have pushed, forced young men, 18-year-olds, to go to war. And you understand? This has been always like that until very recently, when it has not forced, it's like a profession. So that's true. But women in those wars, women were at war. And you know what? They never teach us how to handle the arms. But if you have a war and you have the enemies here, the Germans, when they were, for example, in the Second World War, in the First World War, that was a disaster, by the dealings of a few nations. Rich old men, powerful men, are the ones that are always organizing these wars. And women in those wars, they are killed and they are sexually assaulted. Their children are murdered. Look what is happening now in Sudan. The women, what happens to those women? Do you think they are not at war, those women? They have to move not only themselves, but the children. And they have to feed themselves. So this about the man with a gun go out there and fight, especially in modern warfare, for example, the Americans. How are the Americans fighting? The Americans are fighting from technological, they are using technology. They're not there, throwing bombs at the door of, they themselves at the door of the Iranians. No, they are doing it from a very comfortable way. They can see where it goes. They can see where this, what they want to destroy, etc. It's not the war that we were talking in the past. And in the past, being a soldier was a lot of high reputation. We have this that we've been talking about this Greek mythology. I mean, that was the most important thing for them to be. They preferred to die as a hero than not to be anything,
But
So
don't you think there's something a bit... Okay, so did you know that, for example, over 95% of people killed at work are men? Men are more likely to work the most dangerous jobs in society. Men are actually at risk. So you're right that, yes, historically, women were at risk of dying in childbirth. Men are at risk of dying in pretty much every other instance. So at work, in fighting, in any sort of physical act. And this has been tied to a sense of male honor and duty.
Look, women have been working in the only women that didn't work, but they were doing other type of things, and they were as enslaved. The rich woman, in her own way,
So you think rich women
in
were more...
her own cage, in her own cage, golden cage, she was as much as a prisoner. Okay, she had some power over the cleaners and the servants.
Okay, so let's think about this idea, because we've got less than 10 minutes left.
Can I just answer? Can I just answer about all these men working and the women? No. Look, women have always women in the agriculture, in the farming. I come from a farming background. At the age, very young age, I was working in the farm. I was taking care of animals. My parents did. My mother did work all her life. But you know what happens? The women in the past and the women working in industry, women always work in industries. For example, weaving, making clothes. It was very much like a women's job. Women in mines, women wouldn't go down in the mines, but they were always working. Children were working. So this
So if women could always work,
the men have dominated, the narrative that they are the ones. No, women have been working everywhere. Women,
I agree. It's feminists who say that women couldn't work, because you're right.
No, in the professions, women couldn't go into, until very recently, women couldn't go into medical school. If they ever went, they wouldn't get the titles, they wouldn't give them jobs. Lawyers, judges, architects, women couldn't. I mean, you go in the walls of in art. I mean, go to the National Gallery. There are no women. What are the women? Where are the women? The women didn't have any art.
people weren't in these industries because it was usually people of higher classes who could go to university. So it's a kind of a strange thing to say. You know, most
Gosh,
medicine, in terms of Western medicine, that's quite a recent development.
yeah.
So it's not like a lot of the stuff that feminists say that women couldn't do historically, the majority of men couldn't do them either. If we look at, say, the feudal era, for example, most people were peasants. So you mentioned earlier that the rich men oppressed the men of lower classes.
Yes.
So would you not say that society and life was generally hard for most people?
Look, it was equally hard.
So it was equally hard.
Yeah, just a minute. But within it, there was always, because we have the class system, but within each class system, there are two classes, the man and the woman. So the rich woman, the elite woman marries a man at the top. But if she didn't have children and if she was not providing him satisfactorily with whatever she was supposed to, he would get rid of her, marry somebody else.
Actually, he couldn't
Okay.
do that because
No, they could. Yes, they could
well,
in the past.
a man couldn't divorce his wife if she wasn't having sex with him.
She could.
No. A man couldn't actually divorce his wife on the grounds that she was not being intimate with him. I think that's still
Well,
the case, actually.
there was no even
Men
no.
can't
There
file
was
for divorce.
no. They would return the woman back. I mean, then gradually, and men were having children outside marriage. I mean, they were in France. There was a time when they were in here in the monarchies and the aristocracies.
Yeah, the
Rich
rich,
men,
but
I
not
mean,
the
having
average man,
children
yeah.
with every woman they wanted, and then
The average man.
so that's not really like that. And if they didn't divorce, it was because they didn't. Probably they had married a woman with money, and they didn't want to lose the money. And probably the other family was quite powerful. Otherwise, they would get rid of her. But I wanted to say something. What else was something that you said that was very important that I want to clarify. Okay, so women worked everywhere. Now, the difference is that how comes if women worked all their lives and also brought up the children by themselves, okay, because the men didn't participate in the care of children at all. So, how comes to the present time, all the property, all the land property in the earth, in this planet, belongs 99% belongs to men, is in the hands of men, and all the wealth in the world, up to about 80%, is in the hands of men. All the political powers are in the hands of men. Everything that you read, I mean, as I said, you go to a school, you go to university, you do philosophy, you do history, you do biology, you do psychiatrist, you do anything medicine, and you don't see a woman.
Somebody mentioned that this is more about class warfare than male versus female because you're assuming that most men collectively held power. It was a very small minority of men. And as someone just mentioned, and I was thinking that myself, if I create something, I should be able to take ownership of it and take credit for it. A lot of this stuff was built by men. Men built most of the world in terms of the physicalities of it. Men did all of the hard physical labor in the majority of cases. And, you know, if most men were responsible for building the world, the roof overhead is made by men. If most men were responsible for building all of this, then surely they should be the ones who get to have the financial ownership.
Okay, so what is the most important thing, or what is the most important contribution that women bring into this world?
Having children, I would say. Bringing life.
Okay, so women bring life, but what they bring is not worth any of these stones that men put there to be the big cathedral.
It's a different kind of work.
No. Let me finish, Sarina. Okay, women have been the ones producing child after child, especially in the past, dying in childbirth because nobody cared. The children would die as well. No, they didn't care. Don't laugh because they didn't care. That was the truth. They were used to have 16, 15.
Okay, so no one cared about men dying in war either then?
No, it's good. No. Women care always because women are the ones doing all the suffering. They suffer for their
So
children, they suffer
women
for
just
their men.
suffer, men don't
Now,
suffer at all.
if men build the world, it's because they knew, because men building the world by themselves, first of all, someone has dedicated 24 hours, 7 days a week to them, at least for 3 years. Because if the way we are born, if an infant is left for a minute, that infant died. You understand very easily. When you are a newborn, the humans, animals no, but humans, you are so dependent on somebody that if you are not taken care of by someone all the time, you see the African women with the babies here and working in the fields. Well, because they know if they leave it there sitting down, is that child is going to die, very likely or be killed. So the same thing has happened with humanity and it's still happening. We are all born, those men that go out there, they have had somebody, usually a female, yes, that has been dedicating 7 days, 24 hours for 7 days, for years and years and years, taking care of them. Now, then they go there, yes, and they say, okay, I run this world and I run this home, and you shut up and you do whatever I want. You cannot vote, you cannot study, you cannot get education, you don't have you cannot inherit,
It's a
you
very
cannot,
reductive and
cannot have a,
simplistic view of
you cannot have an
history.
abortion, you cannot, all the things where the woman is basically a child in the hands of a man that decides what she can do, what she cannot. Yes, that's been done. It's been done by men. All those rules have done by men. They may have been building cathedrals or whatever, or bridges or whatever it is, everything that they have done, but on the shoulders of the female population that has been bringing up the children, holding the homes and the family and everything that they needed to go out there the next day and to build and to carry that
So,
stone.
do you not think that we have division of labor, that men build the house and build the society and women raise the family? Also, I want to make this point very seriously. So, you probably know this ancient societies, goddesses were greatly revered. The goddess, a lot of the goddess represented the divine mother. So, why would men view a woman as a second class citizen if they
Yeah.
were then worshipping the goddess?
Okay, let me talk about the goddess because I had so much, but because we have started to talk about. Okay, so we had up to the point where the patriarchy was set up as a system, yes, when we started to develop agriculture societies, up to that point, before that point, it is known that people were nomads, the tribes were nomads. And what was happening, there was no marriage as such as we know it today. There was and it was a matrilineal society,
Yeah.
yes. So the women would be having relationships with the men, whoever, and they had babies. They wouldn't know exactly who the father was, but it didn't matter. It was someone from that tribe. And what mattered was that that was the mother of that child. So it was matrilineal, no matriarchy.
Yeah.
Never ever
Yeah.
in history is been found that women told men what to do. But the importance of
Not sure about
the mother goddess, was very important because she was really, obviously, they saw that she was the one bringing the new humans. They wouldn't know who was the man because obviously at the time it wasn't that clear who was going to be the father or whether. But what they knew is that that woman was the one bringing the baby. So they were veneer. They were adored. Yes. However, in the moment the society changed to be a real society as we know it now, the creation of towns, estates, it was all based on the family. And the family became, yes, just the man and a woman. The man needed to know who that he was the only man in that woman's life. So she was
Yeah.
kept basically locked up because
She
he was
wasn't
the
locked up. It was actually a practical arrangement, as you said, so that people knew who the father was, and it was about paternity. a lot of it was tied to land and property ownership as we moved from.
Yeah, it was only that. It was only to pass property, because it was the building of wealth and property, and that's how the one that
so it wasn't actually about trying to oppress women. It was about practical arrangements.
The oppression of women started there. Historically, that's the beginning of it.
Okay,
so,
well,
just a minute with the goats. With the goats, just let me finish. So once we move into these societies, yes, then what happens is, for example, if we go to the time of the Greeks, because we are Greek and Roman societies, our culture comes from them, the present culture, the West societies. Now, what we have is the Greek gods. So the female goddess and the mother goddess disappear, and we have all male goddess. Many goddesses, but they don't have even the power to stop their husbands having sex.
Is the Virgin Mary in Christianity?
Well, it's about, yes, but that's it. Then there it becomes, they change. Yes, these new gods are made by men, and they men are the new gods. And then Christianity the same, Islam is the same, Judaism is the same. They are all God talking to men, and men are the ones that pass the word and say what is it that this God is telling them, yes, and what are the rules for women. You understand? It changes completely to a male society, which is the patriarchy.
Okay. Yeah, actually, no, it was about, in these religions, both men and women had to adhere to strict religious guidelines. And it was actually that men and women both had different duties and roles to play in a marriage and in society.
Like what? What was the roles that men have to follow in religion?
Well, for example, men had to provide for their wife, provide for their family. They had to honor their wife. They had to be a good husband. They had to be, they had a big role to play in the community. They had to go out and work. I said earlier, men were
the women as well.
Out.
The women work. The women work.
The point I'm trying to make
is that both men and women had.
Okay, right. We've come to it. We've been talking for an hour. So.
Yeah, I just want to say this myth about the man being the provider. Women were working, but the work. One of the things the work women have done is been reproductive and for the family. So it's being considered. She doesn't work. Nowadays, you can hear. I can hear youngsters. I work with youngsters, and I hear. My mother doesn't work. The poor woman doesn't have 2 minutes for herself. Apparently, she doesn't work. The society thinks she doesn't work. She's not going to get any pension for it. She's going to be zero. And then they go out there and they say, have you been working in the last 10 years? And they say, the women say, no, I haven't been working. I've been a housewife. It means you are zero. You are nothing. That's what feminism is saying. It's not saying women can choose whatever they want, but society is the one that has to change the rules. Equality for the one taking care of the children, the same value in that society for the one lifting those stones, whatever it is that men do out there with these muscles, which they don't need to use them anymore. Anyway.
Okay, so we've come to the end of our stream. That was a very interesting discussion. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, and thank you, Guadalupe. I will be live again in a few days with a guest, Ada Akpala, so stay tuned for that. Hope you guys enjoyed, and this is The Rational Female. Thank you very much, and thank you, Guadalupe, for coming on.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.